What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight podcast, powered by Anar LaVine Accident Attorneys. Hope you had a great weekend. Was a great weekend for the Canes. A huge commitment from the number 2 overall player in the state of Louisiana. Consensus 4-star top 100 player, Jabari Antoine, a terrific cornerback prospect. Made a lot of Canes fans happy when Jabari Antoine picked up that FSU hat, slammed it down, picked up the Canes hat, put it on, also turning down hometown LSU. We'll talk about that. But we're also going to start doing position breakdowns. We're getting that close to the season that we're going to be previewing position groups and other things as we gear up for real football. It's about that time. People are playing the NCAA football video game. Those magazines are all on the shelves, have been on the shelves, the preseason preview magazines. We are getting ready for real football season with camp around the corner next week. So we'll do a QB position breakdown, much improved, very interesting position for the Miami Hurricanes after everything we saw last year. Position that hasn't changed, that is Anar LaVine Accident Attorneys position, where they stand in the legal landscape. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anar LaVine. So Pete, jump in real quick. We talked about Jabari Antoine a ton on this show leading up to the commitment. I expressed confidence on Friday that we would be able to land that commitment. Of course, the Canes were able to bring it home with Jabari Antoine after a disappointing loss a couple days prior with DJ Pickett. So you lose one highly rated corner, top 100 player, you add another one. But to me, Pete, you as someone who's followed recruiting for a long time, I followed even longer than you. It seems like Mario is rewriting a lot of the recruiting rules, including the fact that you never beat out LSU for a top hometown kid that they really want.
Yeah, and at that position too, right? It's not just, any position there. Remember, Miami went and got Stan Dobard years ago, and he was a guy that LSU wanted, but he was a tight end. You had a real history and recent history at the time, as always, really in Miami, that you could say we produced tight ends. Here in this particular situation, obviously was committed to LSU, so he's a guy that they wanted, but it's the position that you're really trying to flip the most if you're Mario Cristobal, and Chavis Jackson already doing a really good job of that. But that is where Mario going and prioritizing a certain position. We've heard the last couple of years, hey, O-line a couple of years ago, what does he go out and do? Gets 2 of the top tackles in the country in Sampson and Francis. This last year does what he wanted to do on the defensive line spot, right? And then now he's put his attention to defensive back, cornerback. Obviously, DJ Pickett didn't go Miami's way the other day, but you get a guy like this, and that is, as you said, kind of rewriting what the expectations and the rules, because it's not just expectations are a certain thing, but you don't expect to get a guy like this. You don't get guys like this in that situation. So I think that's my thoughts on the pickup in terms of what it means outside of the player. And then as a player, you understand you're getting a guy with a ton of upside, the length, he's productive, right? But he's a guy who I think is an immediate player at Miami next season.
No, 100% agree with you, Pete. And this is not the first time he's rewriting these recruiting rules. In fact, he already went into Louisiana and beat them out for a kid LSU wanted with Trevante Citizen right when he got here on campus. Of course, Citizen had major injury issues with his catastrophic knee injury in camp, which kind of derailed his career. But that was a huge win for Mario and really set the tone for what you see today. IMG, that was always considered to be sort of an impenetrable powerhouse that you couldn't get there as Miami until you started winning. They've been there and made it really a feeder school for the Hurricanes with top-end guys. Miami not getting Polynesian players. We talked about that at length, and now they become basically the number 1 spot on the East Coast for Polynesian players, one of the top spots in the country for big-time guys. You go into Ocala, you beat them for Tommy Kinsler, a player who Florida really wanted. I mean, that's not a place where you go and win those particular battles. You talk about flipping kids from powerhouse teams that they want. Bama, Georgia, Ohio State. Miami ever got one of those kids in the past, it was because those schools dropped the player. Not the case. Miami's done that multiple times with those schools. Of course, going to the Midwest, beating out teams like Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State for top-end prospects. Your Brock Schatz, your Justin Scott, 5-star, Marquise Lightfoot, 5-star. So Mario really is changing the map recruiting wise. Now it's time to break through some of the glass ceilings on the football field, most notably that ACC championship game. Players like this will certainly help that cause, as will improvement at the quarterback position. So again, we're getting closer to the real football season. So we're going to start talking some real football. I think when you're breaking down positions, obviously you start at the tip of the spear at the quarterback position. And before we move on to this year, I think we should start with where we were last year and what Miami is replacing, which is Tyler Van Dyke, now locked in a battle to start at quarterback at Wisconsin. He's the favorite to start, but not a guarantee after his transfer. Last year started off gangbusters, still finished with decent stats in certain respects just because he was so dominant in those early season games. Out of conference, about 66% passing, 2,703 yards, 8.1 yards per attempt, all good. 19 touchdowns, that's on the low side, 12 INTs, way on the high side. That ratio is terrible. One of the reasons why Miami's turnover giveaways per game was in the hundreds last year. And I think really with Van Dyke, most Canes fans, all Canes fans that are watching the games knows the story there. When they started playing more coverage on him, dropping guys back in zone, not allowing him those just easy one-on-ones where he could throw a nice, pretty ball to Jacoby George and allows you to make a play. When he had to, be patient, when he had to really sit back and dissect, even though he had the time to do so, he struggled with those reads. The Georgia Tech game really was the blueprint for that, and that continued throughout the season. NC State, another horrible performance. It was just a crippling effect on the offense. So, Pete, before we move on to the future, what do you take from Miami's starting quarterback position last year?
Well, obviously there were, real expectations. Like you said, the disappointing part is that a lot of times the offensive line protection was there, right? And obviously mentally his confidence was not where it needed to be, right? I think, look, we wish well on Tyler at Wisconsin. We'll see if he ends up winning a job over there. But obviously something was off in terms of his confidence last year. Whatever you want to put it on, it just was not where it needed to be. But, unfortunately at the time, but now looking at it here, having gotten Emory Williams that experience at the end of the season, I think could go a long way. Not to just flip the page to this team right here, but I think that could go a long way in the future, because what I see right now is a roster, a depth chart, I should say, at the quarterback position there that is really for the first time, and I don't know how long, but layered the right way, right? It's easy to say that you have your guy in Cam Ward, but you're layering in a certain way with a guy in Reese Poffenbarger who, when he came here, look, Miami was still recruiting Cam Ward at the time. He knew there was a good chance that there was going to be another quarterback added to the class, right? So I think he understood, I'm coming here to prove something, whether I'm the starter this year. I know I need to show them something. I want to show them something to show them I can be a future starter here at Miami. So you have that as the backup. You keep moving along here, and we'll get into each of these guys in detail. But Emory Williams, like I said, got real good experience last year. So you have a guy that you have faith if injuries happen, if Poffenbarger isn't what we think he could be, right? Then a guy who's already shown he can be a game manager and win games for Miami with the right pieces around him. And then, of course, you have Judd Anderson as a developmental talent who has shown early good returns here. So again, not to flip the page too quickly there. I know the question was about TVD, but I think the depth chart's really layered the right way here at that position for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and I think, with all the layers, you got to start at the top layer, which is Cam Ward. Miami, the story of Miami's offseason, I know I had some restless nights. I know the Miami staff had some restless nights between, December through Cam Ward's decision in January to come to the Miami Hurricanes. Really stretched it out as far as you could possibly stretch it. Ultimately comes to the Miami Hurricanes and really changes the trajectory of the season. With Ward, look at the stats, 67% passing, 3,736 yards, would be Miami's all-time passing yardage leader for a single season if he puts up those same numbers at the University of Miami. Amazingly, Bernie Kosar still holds that record. Hope he gets well. I know he's dealing with some health stuff. All the best wishes to Bernie Kosar. But the fact that he's had that record since 1984 with all the changes in the sport, you're talking about 40 years. Unbelievable record, and shows you how far ahead of the game Miami was at that time, and maybe how much Miami stagnated in the last 20 years. But putting that aside, Cam Ward, very prolific passer, one of the most prolific passers in the country. 7.7 yards per attempt, comparable yards per attempt to Van Dyke, but on a lot more attempts, a lot more volume. 25 touchdowns, 7 INTs. So it's not just the low INTs, but it's the low INTs on high volume. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the country, top 20 in terms of interception percentage, where you take the number of interceptions times the throw, or as a fraction of the throws that you are making to see how really you protect the ball. Another positive for Ward. 8 touchdowns rushing. He only rushed for 144 yards, took a lot of sacks, which sent that total back, but was not really a running quarterback. Doesn't run necessarily as a running back when he has the ball in his hands. That's not his game. Just his movement, the way he takes tackles. Of course, the fumbles are part of that, but I don't sense that he's a running quarterback naturally, but he is quick and athletic. 8 touchdowns in the red zone gives you another dimension. You saw Miami struggle in the red zone against NC State. Towards the end of the game, cost him that game. Louisville, having the option to run, not necessarily into a crowded box like a Tim Tebow might, but when there's going to be no one there, or you're going to have, a run pass option that puts the defender in conflict because Ward has the ability to run, I think that makes this offense much, much more dangerous.
And D, I think something that we've heard, both of us, is that he's done a very good job in terms of leadership and coming in here. And look, I don't think there was much of a, I need to win the guys over, because it's not like he was stepping into a situation where there was a real established guy this last year, right? As we just were talking about. But it's almost like the skill position guys and the offensive linemen and the guys on the offensive side of the ball, at least, are like looking at him like, lead us, Cam. And they understand that they need that to take this team to the next level. So I think that transition has been pretty seamless from what we both have heard. And again, until they get out on the field, we won't see that 100%. But from everything we've heard in terms of practice, we saw some of it there in the spring game with Cam's performance. But in terms of stepping in, it's not like these transfer situations can be tricky at any position, right? It's not like some of these guys come in here. This isn't a Miami thing. This is all across the country, just the nature of how transfers work now, D. A guy comes in and you're threatening his spot. You've been here for a year or two, however long you've been here. You have a new guy coming in that you've heard X, Y, and Z about. He's a transfer. That can be an issue at any position. At the quarterback spot, it affects the whole team more so than these other spots, right? So you're coming in here saying, well, this is the guy they're talking about. Let's see what he's got. I don't think that's been any sort of issue for Cam coming in here. So I think that goes a long way for him.
No question. The leadership is really what you hear the most about Cam Ward from people who have been around him in the building, because that's something you don't really know until they're there. And I can promise you, everybody I've talked to has raved about his leadership privately. Sometimes you will hear, hey, this guy's good, but we got questions here and there. Of course, there's certain limits on what you can say and what you can't say when you're sitting in my seat. I can tell you, I've not heard one bad word about this guy on the record, off the record, third hand, nothing. As far as since he's been on here on campus, the leadership, the IQ is off the charts. You see that in some of the decision-making in terms of the interception percentage. Of course, the question with him is going to be the fumbles. He was the worst fumbler in the entire nation. Some of that, I think, is small hands. Some of that was the pressure he was under with a poor Washington State offensive line. That's one of the reasons he came to Miami. He told us when we interviewed him at Titanic for Canes Connection that the offensive line was really the biggest factor on the field for him coming to Miami. But some of that's going to be him protecting the ball, in terms of how he carries the ball. Some of it's going to be physical. I don't think he's ever going to have the greatest grip strength, but decision-making, I think, and protection is going to have a huge role. Also had one of the worst running games in the country at Washington State. That's going to be different for him here. A lot of advantages that he did not have at Washington State. So what will translate? And really, what are you replacing with TVD? TVD had terrific size, one of the bigger, more physical NFL-looking quarterbacks in the country on the hoof. Ward is not tiny, but he's not that. But if you look at his games played, 13 games played in 2022, 12 games played last year, and he was getting hit a lot. He had a very, very poor offensive line, as we discussed, much worse than TVD. So that gives you some confidence that he's durable and the physicality is not going to be a problem for him. Also, the strength of TVD, in my opinion, was TVD's just natural passing ability. He wasn't like the most schooled guy. He was a multi-sport guy in high school. TVD was, but baseball, played some basketball, played some tight end early in his career. Ward, also one of those guys. He was a basketball player, very prolific point guard. But despite not being overcoached at the quarterback position, they throw it both very beautifully, very naturally. They can put velocity without sacrificing accuracy. It's not like a jugs machine with either of those guys. They can both throw with touch. So you're taking the strength of TVD, which is the natural throwing. I'd say Ward's probably even more talented as a pure passer. Then to me, heightened decision-making. If you play pass against Cam Ward, he'll kill you with checkdowns all day. Heightened quickness outside the pocket and ability to elude and run to throw. I think he's far superior to TVD in terms of short area quickness and ability to get outside. And then just being the leader of the team, you hear more about that from Cam Ward. He's not the most vocal guy, but you've heard much more about his leadership than I heard about TVD. And this is not just bashing the guy in retrospect. Just if I'm comparing apples to apples, what I heard last summer going to camp, this summer going into camp, Cam Ward seems to be at least creating the impression with others that he is that leader.
Yeah, and look, it's a great start there, but like we were talking about, it's a very solid room altogether here as we keep it moving. And Reese Poffenbarger coming in from Albany D, a guy that obviously when he committed to Miami, there were no guarantees that Ward would be coming, but a guy that put up big time numbers at his previous stop. Obviously going to be questions about how he can transition now to the step up in competition, but obviously he has had a spring now at Miami, and the coaches have had an impression, been able to get an impression of him.
Yeah, carried Albany deep into the playoffs, was by far their most impactful player. That's a school where you had Jared Verse a couple of years ago, ended up being one of the better players in the ACC and in the country. 58% passer, 59%, 58.6% passer for Reese Poffenbarger, but 3,614 yards, not far behind Cam Ward, 7.7 yards per attempt, identical, of course, at a different level of football, 36 touchdowns, 13 picks, also ran for 6 touchdowns, 184 yards. And I think watching Reese, his game film at Idaho, and then seeing him now that he's been on campus, watching him in spring at length, the comp I have for him is a familiar name to Canes fans, and that would be Malik Rozier, who led Miami to really their best season in a long, long time in 2017. Similar stature, both 6 foot, 6'1", guys with athletic ability, guys that could run. Malik had a very strong arm. Poffenbarger has a surprisingly strong arm. They both got twitch in their arm. They can really send up the RPMs quickly without having to load up too much or have everything perfect around them. The accuracy is probably the biggest question with both of those two players. Even though they're shorter guys, a lot of times shorter guys, they get by with accuracy. These guys are sort of the other way. Their arm strength and athleticism carries them more than their accuracy. You see the 58% completion. I don't think Rozier ever had completion over 56, I want to say, at Miami. So similar issues in that respect, but gamers, tough guys that their teammates believed in. Malik, I would say, had the edge on running. I think Reese might be a little quicker as far as eluding. Malik was very good at putting his foot in the ground and killing you up the middle with the run. Whereas Poffenbarger is more likely to get outside of you with quick twitch. He's a very good basketball player in high school. Quick twitch, get outside, and really likes to challenge people deep. You saw the 13 picks, 36 touchdowns. He's a gunslinger. He is going to throw picks. He threw some bad picks in spring, but he also made some big plays deep, had some pass interference plays deep. He is not a dink and dunk passer, for better or worse. He wants to make big plays and brings that kind of mentality to the field.
Which, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, the injury thing, we all knock on wood with it, but it seems like the way this offense is going to be playing for Cam Ward in terms of the ability that he's going to have to spread the ball around and very strong backfield expected, that Poffenbarger could fit in very well with that kind of scheme.
No question. I think anybody's going to look better in this scheme with the pieces that you have around. I think Poffenbarger, these two, and this is going to be the quarterback battle. He is not locked in as the number 2. Don't let this order deceive you. I think Poffenbarger has the edge of my personal opinion, but you're going to get a lot of different opinions from people who watch practice and who are around the team. So that battle is continuing into autumn camp. August, we'll see who's who, but it's going to be a very, very interesting battle. I side with Poffenbarger. We'll get into Emory in a second, just because of, I think the overall twitch and athleticism with things aren't Prairie is a little better. I also think, Pete, like you alluded to, he's probably more similar to Cam Ward. He's not as accurate as Cam Ward. He doesn't protect the ball like Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward is just a different level at this point of a player, particularly in those areas, the consistent accuracy and the just the overall IQ and ability to run the offense. Not that Poffenbarger doesn't run the offense,
but that's why it's an interesting thing, because if there is an injury, you tend to lean towards the guy that you trust in terms of, well, he's not going to turn the ball over. He's not going to try to make any crazy throws. And obviously we haven't seen Poff on the field yet, right, in a live game situation. But just seeing that gunslinger mentality on film from Albany, does he have it in him to tone it back? And look, maybe he doesn't need to. Maybe he gets an opportunity and goes out there and is slinging it around and becomes a sensation overnight. But my point is, we've seen Emory Williams already, albeit they didn't really give him much of the offense to work with because of the situations that he was coming into against Clemson, against Florida State, right? But at the same time, we saw him keep Miami in those games, win against Clemson, and then obviously we're in that game late against Florida State as well. So, and you expect the team to be even better around him this year. So that's where it's going to be a very interesting battle and decision, I think.
No question. And we're going to get to Emory in a second. I want to point out also Poffenbarger, the 6 rushing touchdowns. You did see him run in camp in spring. He can do it. Compare him to Ward, not that much different in terms of their running. I actually think without contact, but just seeing them on film when they did play full contact, Poffenbarger at Albany, Ward at Washington State, I actually like Poffenbarger as a ball carrier better because they're both pretty similar size. Ward's a little taller, but I feel like Poffenbarger just absorbs hits a little better.
Compact.
Yeah. Ward scares me with the fumbles, and he's such a good passer. You worry about him. Whereas Poffenbarger, he's more of a player. So, overall guy as opposed to just a pure passer like Ward is. So you don't mind him getting dirty. That's part of what he brings to the table and how he gets his teammates inspired. Before we move on to Emory Williams, you want to get that Cam Ward #1 jersey. If you want to get any kind of Canes gear as he gear up for fall, Caneswear, caneswear.com. Store in Davie, unbelievable environment, the TVs, stuff you never even heard of, memorabilia on the walls. There's stuff on top of stuff. You got to dig through piles to find new stuff because they just have so much, but very organized, very terrific staff. One of the best experiences you can have as a Canes fan is going to Caneswear in Davie. Also, if you're not in town, caneswear.com, they'll take care of you in the order, the spot where Miami fans shop. Switching gears here to Emory Williams, quarterback, big guy, 6'4", big legs, big body kid, the biggest guy in the room as far as the guys who played. Judd Anderson, obviously we'll get to him. He's a giant. But as far as those 3 we just listed, Emory's the biggest, sturdiest body type, low-ranked recruit out of the Panhandle, ends up going to the Elite 11 camp, doing well there. I don't believe he made the Elite 11 like Luke Nickel did, but he had a very solid showing at the Elite 11. Auburn came in late, but again, this was not the most heralded recruit, not expected to play as a freshman, comes in, really elevates himself as a quarterback and shows that he was the guy that the coaches trusted when they needed somebody to relieve Tyler Van Dyke. He goes in to the Clemson game. Nobody expected him to win that one. Wins it by protecting the ball, making plays when he needed to down the stretch, hit a couple nice deep balls to Colby Young. Really did some nice things in the red zone in that game. It's not a game where he lit the world on fire, but he was steady managing the game. Of course, Florida State, similar story, a lot of checkdowns, wasn't tearing it up, but makes some big plays, some timely plays. Nice red zone pass to Jacoby George. And then, of course, the inspirational run towards the end where he really stretches for that first down, ends up getting hurt, breaking his non-throwing wrist, misses some time, but comes back. There's a chance to start the bowl, which probably hurt Miami and his development, but then comes back for the spring. Wasn't 100% to start, although he was pretty much going full go, but picked it up towards the end and really was there, like he never missed a beat at the end as far as what he brings to the table. 62% passer, 470 yards, 6.6 yards per attempt. Again, game plan scaled down for what he does. 3 touchdowns, 1 INT, but the character, you hear about it off the field. You saw it on the field with that run against FSU. You saw it with his ability to keep you in those tough games, throw into the fire against the 2 most talented defenses on Miami's schedule, along with Texas A&M. But Clemson and Florida State doesn't get that much better than that. A lot of pros on the field. He goes out there and competes. So you wonder, what can he do against maybe the lesser ACC teams or as he gets more experience? A lot to like about Emory, but still some question marks, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and talking about the character, I remember Jabari Brown saying last year there were times where, if he woke up and saw Emory was gone, then he was probably late because Emory was always the one getting out there early in the playbook and all that. So obviously he put himself in a very good position last year because he got that opportunity and ran with it. But I think the question, D, it's more of a long-term question really, is what his ceiling is, right? And I think some of that stems from the athletic ability or lack thereof, just because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen him, extending plays and again, in his opportunities last year, he was not asked to do much of that, right? But I think that's where the question becomes: does he have the arm to fit it in these tight windows? Can he make throws off platform? I mean, these are the sort of things that, again, if you're talking about a next level type of quarterback that can win you games, not just not lose you games, right? That's going to be the question moving forward long term with him. But I think very, very much so can continue to take that next step this year and do things within the offense if his number is called upon that he wasn't necessarily asked to do last year because he didn't have that experience just yet. But I think he's capable of more than what we saw last year for sure. Yeah,
and as you look at the pros and cons, of course, the size, 6'4", easily 210 plus, big legs. He's probably closer to 220 right now. He's a big kid. That's not a problem. In fact, that is a strength. Intangibles we've talked about on the field, off the field. He's shown he can manage a game, so he can, which you usually ask your backup quarterback to do. He's shown he can do that as a true freshman. You expect him to continue to get better because of his work ethic. I think when everything is clean, he is an accurate passer with more than adequate arm strength for the college level. I think he's a great red zone passer. That's probably his strength to me right now. Whenever they do those red zone drills where you just have multiple drives in the red zone, he usually lights it up, as that is to me his strength. You've seen some nice passes to Jacoby George in that area for him. I think that's fade to Colby Young. I think that's really where he's best as a passer, but he's like a metronome. You know what you're going to get. He's going to be consistent. He's mechanically sound. He does have some nice footwork in the pocket, well-schooled in that respect. I think to me, the question is, like you said, athleticism. And it's not just, look, Cam Ward at 8 touchdowns rushing, Poffenbarger at 6 touchdowns rushing. They're read option threats. I don't see that with Emory Williams in the red zone. He did have some runs, including the run he got hurt on, but I don't see him being like them where he really can be a threat to score or get a crucial first down if you don't respect him. But to me, the bigger question with his athleticism is if a defensive tackle's coming up the middle because he beat his man, or if there's an unblocked linebacker flying through the A-gap, Cam Ward and Poffenbarger both have the ability to make a quick move and then use their quick twitch arm and their different arm angles to get a viable pass off in a very short time with a lot of congestion around them. It doesn't have to be perfect for them to release an accurate ball with velocity. They can do that with a quick move to the side and then a quick twitch throw, potentially, at a different angle. With Emory, sometimes the throwing motion to me, and I'm not a quarterback expert by any means, but you guys all saw the games, the throwing motion to me can look a little awkward at times, and I don't think his accuracy translates as much when he's asked to get off his spot. So I think that to me is the question with Emory as he gets older, more time in the strength and conditioning program. Can he get more athletic? Not Michael Vick, but a little more creative when things aren't perfect.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. But again, D, you're talking about a guy who, when his number was called upon last year in a very difficult situation offensively for Miami last season, he did what he was asked for the most part, right? And made some big throws in the face of pressure. But I think we both have the same questions long term again, and these are discussions we'll have looking forward as we look at Miami's situation for next year. But that question is going to be, who does Shannon Dawson trust? Because they'll get time, the backups will get time at a certain point, not even for injury, but just to get them their time, hopefully in certain games this year. And who's he going to trust when they need that?
Yeah, and look, I know I've said I think I put Reese slightly ahead coming into camp, but this is not a done deal. I mean, Reese may not even be ahead going into camp, depending who you talk to. This is just my opinion. But what I would say when it comes to Emory is he has shown the ability to manage in a way that I don't know if Reese has shown. I've seen times at practice where Poffenbarger will make a throw, whether a late throw outside the numbers or just, trying to fit something in that he really shouldn't fit in, the kind of gunslinger plays, right? Where those would have been going the other way for 6. And if that happens in a game that you're trying to manage, because God forbid Cam Ward is injured, that could cost you the game. Mm-hmm. So I could see a situation where maybe Poffenbarger is in the game, makes some mistakes that really cripple you, and the coaches say, wait a minute, I know Emory, what he can do. I know what he won't do. I know his limitations. We can scheme around it. And he becomes a more preferable option, even though he's less athletic, because he'll do a better job protecting the ball. We saw what turnovers did to Miami last year. So ongoing battle, and they each bring different strengths and weaknesses to the table as your backup to Cam Ward.
And then the last guy here in the group, we'll be talking about Judd Anderson, the freshman out of Georgia. And look, not much pressure on him going into the season. He, understands probably that he's not going to see much time this season, probably taking a red shirt. But some promising signs, right, in terms of what Miami saw in the spring. You're talking about a guy who's 6'6", right? And a lot of times you think of statues at that size, you think of the Joe Flaccos of the world, but a guy who has more athleticism than people would expect at that size. He's not running all over the place, but can elude some guys, I think, in the backfield there and make plays, extend plays better than most, again, would expect at that stature.
Yeah, I think interesting player. So option wing T type system. Sorry, not option system, wing T type system earlier in his career. So he's handing the ball off a lot. Ends up playing more as a passer as a junior. Has some high upside plays. Got him the offer from Miami, but also had a lot of interceptions. Ended up really turning it around as a senior. He transferred in the fall of his senior year, which is a concern. I don't like quarterbacks that are moving around too much, even though that's the kind of the new reality. It is a little bit of something you watch. Jake Garcia famously moved around a lot. So Judd Anderson transfers to Warner Robins, a huge program during his senior year, but has a very good year. Very productive, cuts down on the INTs, increases the touchdowns, and then they make a nice run in the playoffs. Has some big moments, some clutch moments. So you like the trajectory. And then when you watch him at Miami, I see a guy who at 6'7" almost. Yeah. Still skinny, but getting the right weight. He's not going to be a skinny guy that long. He's going to be a big quarterback. The fluidity. There's a double-double player on the basketball court, a big man, not a point guard. Usually you like your quarterbacks to be the point guard, like a Joe Burrow or a Cam Ward. But this guy was a big man. Obviously 6'7" in high school is pretty big. But double-double guy. And when you see him at his height, he is extremely fluid. He moves naturally. He does not look stiff in any respect. Even for a 6'1" guy, he moves good. Has some twitch. Again, these are all things you see quickly on the practice field, because if someone's goofy or if someone is slow twitch, it gets exposed fast. He's not slow twitch, and he's not goofy. He is smooth. He has a quick step. He can run a little bit. I'm not going to say he can run like Ward or like a Tier King or something like that, but the guy can run. He definitely runs better than Emory, and he can get first downs in the ACC. He has long strides. He has a good sense. He has a good first step. The arm is good as well. Natural release. Question with him is going to be the processing. He did not get very many reps in camp because you had 4 really scholarship quarterbacks ahead of him. He's the 5th. Cam Ward, Reese Poffenbarger, Emory Williams, and Jabari Brown, who was here in spring. So he was fifth. He wasn't getting that many reps. When he did get reps, he showed some nice things. There were times when he moved the ball down the field, had a beautiful deep ball to, I believe, Robbie Washington, had a couple touchdowns to Robbie, both run and throw, hitting him in alignment of the run, also throwing it where he could run under it deep. Had some very nice moments. However, you saw at the spring game, late on a throw outside, gets picked the other way. Processing is going to be the question. This is not a point guard. This is a finisher, a big man. Can he make the transition to be the distributor? Purdy's extremely smart. He's a great worker. So hopefully he sticks with the process and you see him gain command of the offense and allow his physical traits to flourish. But he's someone I'm going to be watching very closely in fall because his rep count is going to go up with Jabari Brown gone. He's been here a little bit longer now. He's not just fresh off the boat. He's been here for a minute. What can he show in fall? Because what I saw in spring in limited doses was he was not out of water physically at all. You would have known that quick. Like Taylor Cook, guys like that, you know it pretty quick. Evan Sheriffs, even though he had some flashes in scrimmages as far as productivity, the arm never really got there. Judd's got the arm. He's got the size. He's got the fluidity. He's got the twitch. Can he command an offense? And it's going to take us some time to figure that one out. But he showed me enough that he's still a viable option for the future, or at least someone to evaluate. He's not a lemon, put it that way, physically. He's not someone you just throw aside. He's someone that's got a chance, but he's got to do a lot to show he can command this offense.
Yeah, and I was showing some clips here from practice that I had tweeted out when I had been going to the media sessions during spring, and you see the clips of him throwing these little quick 5-yard, comeback routes to receivers, but it was a little flick of the wrist. It's not this elongated delivery that some of these taller quarterbacks have. You see that fluidity. You talked about it in his movement, but I'd imagine he can throw some balls with nice touch downfield. So
yeah, an easy release, like you said. The fakes are good. The ball fakes. I mean, he looks good. I mean, when I say looks good, I mean he looks good. If you go to practice and you see him, you look at him and go, yeah, that makes sense. It's going to be the processing. It's going to be the game reps. Is he going to get into a game this year? Unlikely. There's guys ahead of him, but at least scrimmage reps. In a perfect world, you're beating somebody so bad that he can get in there and get a couple reps. There's enough there to work with. Doesn't guarantee a success, but you're not crossing him off the list yet. I guarantee you more competition will come. Luke Nickel, of course, another Georgia quarterback, different type of quarterback, more accomplished in high school. Coming in, that'll be a battle. It's going to be up to Judd, see what he does from week to week. But overall, this quarterback position, Pete, you said it, layers. Premium, elite player at the top, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the nation, potentially the best when it's all said and done, maybe a Jaden Daniels type season. It's all on the table. Then 2 guys after him, different styles, both of whom have won games at the college level and have shown toughness and have had their teammates rally around them to win ball games. All you could ask with a backup quarterback, and then you got your developmental guy. So the quarterback position at Miami is in the best shape on paper that it's been in since Ken Dorsey was the quarterback, and even then, he did not have a backup. De'Aaron King really was a one-man show when he was there. Maybe that's the other spot where you could say Miami's been this good, but I don't think any of these guys had the overall talent of a Cam Ward.
Agreed, and I'm excited about the room for sure. And listen, Cam Ward is coming in here with a lot to prove as well, right? So you're not getting a guy he's a top 5, top 10 quarterback coming into the season, but again, he's motivated because he would have left last year if he was going to be drafted highly and drafted where he thinks and where we all believe he has the ability to be. So you're talking about a guy coming in here with a lot to prove, and from what we understand, he's motivated to do that, and he's using it as that chip on his shoulder, which, again, he was a 0-star, unrated guy coming in to college, went to Incarnate Word at first. So guy who continues to level up here, and excited to see what he can do to lead this team.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. He's not coming here for a vacation. He's coming here to win the Heisman and be the first overall pick. That's, I'm sure, his goal. And, of course, to win a national championship. I'm sure those are his goals. And look, we've seen quarterbacks with talent emerge, from whether it's to Joe Burrow, whether it's to Jaden Daniels. The list goes on. He goes from a team where he had absolutely zero running game to one of the best running backs in the country in Damian Martinez. He goes from a team where he had absolutely zero offensive line to one of the best offensive lines in the country. He goes from a good receiving core to what I would consider a great receiving core with a lot of options. So all eyes are on him, and everything that I've heard about this young man, everything we saw when we interviewed him, IQ, will to win, and the teammates believe in him, a true leader. Never been more excited to see a quarterback in the orange and green than I am when we go up to Gainesville and we watch number one perform.
Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be coming at you all week with these positional preview breakdowns. And of course, any recruiting news, D will keep you updated as it comes in the bank. Of course, you can go check out CanesInsight.com for completely free articles. Join the website completely free. Join the discussion on the forums, most active community on the internet for Canes fans. And again, completely free. So go sign up today if you aren't in there already. D, anything else?
No, and listen, if you want to advertise on the Canes Insight podcast or on Canes Insight, it's about to go crazy because the season's coming up. So get in now. We guarantee views, guarantee hits. If you want to make sure that your product is in front of the Miami Hurricane fan community, reach out to me, CanesInsight@gmail.com. We'll work through it. We will guarantee the views and hits so you know exactly what you're paying for. Again, CanesInsight@gmail.com.
Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah. This an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew. Down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news. Cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like Canes Insight. Nobody do it like Canes Insight. Nobody do it like Canes Insight.